Many people don't know, but you can see Russia from the US. You can see it if you are viewing from Alaska, one of the American states. As you can see on the map, Alaska has no land connection with the rest of the US. However, Alaska is connected to Russia, and you can literally walk from one to another under the right conditions. But that is not the only surprising thing about Alaska, as scientists continue to make shocking discoveries that they cannot explain. What have scientists found recently in Alaska, and why are they puzzled by them? Join us in this video to find out as we bring you scientists' terrifying discoveries in Alaska that change everything. Alaska, America's icebox. The state may be known for its cold temperatures, but there's a lot going on in the state apart from the frigid weather. When we say Alaska is massive, we mean it. Alaska is by far the largest US state in terms of land area with 663,300 square miles. It is larger than the combined size of the next three largest US states, Texas, California, and Montana. In fact, if Alaska were a separate country, it would rank among the top 20 largest in the world. Alaska contains more than 40% of the country's surface water resources. It contains 3 million lakes larger than 5 acres, 12,000 rivers, and numerous creeks and ponds. The capital of Alaska, Juneau, is the only one that's not accessible by road in the US. To get there from any part of the state, you need to climb aboard a plane or boat. One of the attractions of Alaska is the incredible light show put up by nature, Aurora Borealis. The Northern Light season in Alaska begins around mid-August and lasts until mid-April, giving you 240 days to see the amazing spectacle in the night skies. The necessary conditions for the Northern Lights indicate that the sky must be clear, and Fairbanks is ideal for this. On average, clear and dark skies are guaranteed 4 out of 5 nights. The first people arrived in Alaska around 15,000 years ago during the Ice Age. At the time, a frozen land bridge known as Beringia connected Siberia to eastern Alaska, and migrants followed herds of animals across it. These people split into two groups. One stayed in Beringia, while the other migrated down into North and South America. This second group is regarded as the ancestors of all Native Americans in the Americas. The first permanent settlements in Alaska date back about 4,000 years. The majority of indigenous people hunted sea mammals such as whales, while those living inland hunted caribou. Russians first came into contact with indigenous people in the mid-1700s. Given the acrimonious relationship between the US and Russia, you may wonder how Alaska ended up under the control of the former. Until the mid-1800s, Russia controlled most of what is now Alaska, until the fur trade began to fail for ecological and commercial reasons, and Russia decided to focus its efforts to the east. However, after Britain won the Crimean War in 1856, the Russian government refused to sell Alaska to the British. Instead, Russia began negotiations with the United States to sell Alaska. After initially being hesitant to make such a large purchase in the aftermath of the Civil War, Secretary of State William Seward eventually decided to acquire the territory under the guise of Manifest Destiny. Seward purchased Alaska for the United States for $7.2 million, or about 2 cents per acre in 1867. Seward's purchase was derided, and American expansion into Alaska was slow, but on January 3, 1959, nearly 100 years after the territory was purchased, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the declaration naming Alaska the 49th state. And scientists have confirmed the continuous occupation of Alaska with a massive recent discovery. According to a study published in the journal Nature, the skeletons of 2 ancient infants who lived and died in Alaska 11,500 years ago are helping to tell the story of a previously unknown population known as the ancient Beringians. Remember the Beringia land bridge between Russia and Alaska? This discovery was the first genomic evidence that all Native Americans descended from the same population that crossed the continent via land bridge. Both infants discovered in the Upward Sun River burial pit in the Tanana River Valley of central Alaska were female. They were given symbolic names meaning Dawn Twilight Child Girl and Sunrise Child Boy by the local indigenous community. The first child died between the ages of 6 and 12 weeks, and the second died prematurely at 30 weeks of development, never having had the chance to live. Their DNA suggests that they were related, possibly as first cousins. Using her DNA, researchers were able to sequence the genome of the sunrise child girl known as USR1. She was discovered to be related to Native Americans, but in a unique way. The DNA of USR1 led the researchers to believe they had discovered a previously unknown genetic population of Native Americans dubbed ancient Beringians, who represent the oldest known genetic lineage of Native Americans to date. The new data enables the researchers to test and develop models for determining when and where population splits occurred. Around 34,000 years ago, a population began to separate from Asia, but genetic exchanges continued until 25,000 years ago, implying that they were in Alaska by then. According to the new data, the shift occurred 10,000 years earlier than previously thought. This group also met another population of people who were more closely related to modern Europeans than to Asians around 25,000 years ago. This is how the Beringians came to be. These people, including the ancient Beringians, hunted bison, elk, hare, squirrels, and birds based on what they learned at the site. There is also evidence of the first salmon exploitation in the Americas. Despite living through 6,000 years of climate and vegetation change, they adapted their strategy of using organized hunting parties, processing the game they caught, and delivering it to centrally located base camps such as the Upward Sun River site. But what became of the ancient Beringians? Scientists can't tell yet. To determine that, they need samples from people in the region to ascertain to what extent ancient Beringian gene flow occurred with neighboring peoples. What scientists know, however, is that Alaska can be highly volcanic. The imagery of a volcanic eruption may not go well with the cold weather of the state, but Alaska has reminded scientists that a volcano may erupt after thousands of years of laying dormant. Four-Peaked Volcano is a little-known volcano in Katmai National Park's northeast corner. It is made up of isolated andesitic rock outcrops that rise above Four-Peaked Glacier. With one possible exception, it was thought to be dormant prior to the first historic eruption in 2006. As a result, it was not directly monitored, despite the fact that the neighboring Katmai volcanic system 100 kilometers to the southwest and Augustine volcano 70 kilometers to the north are. AVO received several citizen reports primarily from the Homer area of a dark plume fed by what appeared to be two sources near Cape Douglas on the west side of Cook Inlet from Homer. According to satellite images, the plume reached a height of more than 6 kilometers. It took 3 days to confirm Four-Peaked was the source of the eruption, and another 3 days to reveal the source of the phreatic blast due to its remoteness and bad weather. Four-Peaked Volcano is located on the west side of the Shelikof Strait at the entrance to Cook Inlet, just west of Kodiak Island, nearly 70 kilometers south of Augustine Volcano, 155 kilometers southwest of Homer, Alaska, 13 kilometers south of neighboring Mount Douglas Volcano, and 27 kilometers north of neighboring Kaguyak Volcano and Caldera. This section of the Alaskan Peninsula is heavily glaciated and has most likely been ice-covered since the last ice age began over 100,000 years ago. As a result, anything resembling a volcano must be recently active, as glaciers' erosive action will quickly remove the soft materials that form the cones of these primarily andesitic volcanoes. Mount Douglas to the north is a glaciated stratovolcano with an active crater lake and uneroded lava flows on its northwest flank. There are also active fumaroles, but no eruptions have occurred in recorded history. Local Alaskans initially saw Four-Peaked Volcano as a series of rock outcroppings in the Four-Peaked Glacier rather than a true stratovolcano. It is an andesitic stratovolcano surrounded by lava flows and extensive hydrothermal alteration of rocks near the summit. It reaches a height of 2,105 meters. Its most recent dormant period is thought to have lasted 10,000 years. The size and style of previous eruptions are not well constrained. Previous andesite and dacite eruptions indicate that eruptions can be explosive. Only 3 brief periods of historic activity are known for Four-Peaked Volcano. The first was a July 1965 report of steam and gas plumes near the summit of Four-Peaked. The second event was a phreatic eruption on September 17, 2006. The final occurrence was a minor increase in seismicity between April and May of 2013. And volcanoes are not the only shocking things about Alaska, as the residents will readily tell you. After living through an episode of fish literally falling from the sky, they deserve to tell their story. But fish raining down is not even as scary as the type of fish, the vampire lamprey, the stuff horror movie makers like to use in their flicks. Just as baffling is the reason why these blood-sucking fish were dropping from the sky in large numbers. Over several weeks, Alaskans in Fairbanks were subjected to the horror of finding non-glittery fish out of water. Cold-blooded, blood-sucking monster fish have literally fallen from the sky, ostensibly swooping in on land-based prey. The creatures, the Arctic lampreys, are parasitic fish that use several rows of grotesque teeth to latch onto other water dwellers and suck their blood. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game posted photos of the foot-long eel creatures on Facebook, with gaping jaws full of circles of teeth and multiple tongues like an infant sarlacc pit. In their Arctic habitat, they survive by latching onto larger fish, sucking blood until engorged, and then detaching, sometimes killing their prey in the process. Lampreys, also known as cyclostomes roundmouths, are among the most primitive vertebrates still alive today. They lack jaws in favor of a round, sucker-like mouth filled with keratin teeth, the same protein that makes up your hair and fingernails. The majority of lampreys are anadromous, which means they spend the majority of their lives at sea but return to fresh water to spawn. When a male reaches a suitable breeding area, he'll wriggle around, creating a depression on the riverbed. Lamprey romance is not exactly gentle. The male uses his teeth to attach to the back of the female's head and wraps around her body while she deposits 25,000 eggs. Lampreys feed on flesh and bodily fluids as adults by attaching to small fish and rasping away. However, because juveniles lack the necessary mouth gear, they must spend an incredible 3 to 7 years filtering organic particles from the water while their teeth grow into the horror show that they are. Now, several reasons have been given for the occurrence of lampreys falling from the sky. The most popular is it is the handiwork of gulls. Gulls are scooping them out of the Chena River with their bills and dropping them while in flight. Arctic lampreys spawn in the Chena River and spend several years as juveniles in the mud. However, because of their body shape and feeding habits, many lifelong Alaskans have never seen one of these scary fish up close. Birds dropping fish is actually a common occurrence. They can usually hang on to them, but every now and then the fish will wiggle free, and there you have it. Imagine having to hold on to a slippery, tubular, and skinny object that won't stop wriggling in mid-air. A lamprey is a heavy load for a seagull, especially when it grows to be 15 inches long, so they can get dropped on unsuspecting Alaskans below. However, the theory has not been confirmed.
Scientists in Alaska are closer to figuring out what exactly coated the state's shores with orange goo.
Now, those lampreys may be shocking, but what about stepping outside your home and finding everywhere covered with massive bright orange slime? Wouldn't you rather go back to bed and sleep and hope the nightmare is over by the time you wake up? One morning, a mysterious orange goo simply washed up on the shores of a fishing village, Kivalina, in Alaska. It was a bright, moldy-looking substance that first covered the harbor's rocks. However, the following day, following a rainstorm, residents discovered the goo inside rain buckets and even on rooftops. One resident claimed she couldn't smell anything strange after putting her hand into one of the goo-filled buckets, despite the fact that the substance appeared to be solid. A day or so later, most of the orange goo had washed away and the remnants had turned into clumpy dry powder, but there was a report of dead minnows found in the lagoon the night the substance appeared. The question is, how did it get there? What was this enigmatic orange goo? Experts were called to the scene after samples were sent to labs. Initial investigations revealed that the substance was not man-made. Several theories surfaced about the origin of this mysterious substance. One of them is that it came from space. When Comet Elenin began to disintegrate into small chunks of ice and dust around the same time, some immediately linked it to Alaska's mysterious goo problem. Comet Elenin, also known as C2010X1, was discovered by Russian astronomer Leonid Elenin and was cruising through our solar system. However, the comet was feared to have more impact than just the strange orange goo. Some people predicted that Elenin would cause a slew of natural disasters such as earthquakes and strange gravitational distortions. It was even dubbed the Doomsday Comet by some media outlets. Another explanation is that the substance was made up of countless microscopic eggs. In fact, that was the initial conclusion of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, but when the agency examined the substance further, they discovered it was even more unsettling. They confirmed the presence of fungal spores, which cause rust and account for the luminous color. Rust fungus is a plant disease that causes yellowish orange or brown discoloration on the leaves and stems before producing spores that spread the infection. However, part of the mystery remained. The scientists were unable to positively identify the exact species of rust fungus. The sample they tested did not match any comparison samples or anything else anyone had seen. So what does it all mean? Residents of Kivalina live primarily off the land, and many are concerned about the goo's impact on wildlife and plants, which dried powdery and likely became airborne. People who went berry picking over the weekend couldn't tell if the goo was on the fruit, which is the same color as the eggs. And what's more, the caribou have now arrived in the area, but she does not believe they pose a significant threat as a food source. Alaska officials are debating the mystery among state agencies to determine what steps to take if a potential risk is detected. And while orange goo is not a normal occurrence, a fact of life that many intending visitors may not know about is Alaskan mosquitoes. The tropical parts of the world are known for the havoc done by mosquitoes, where hundreds of thousands die each year of malaria. However, shockingly, the largest mosquitoes in the world are found in Alaska. In fact, mosquitoes are so common in the state that they are jokingly called the unofficial state bird. Alaska's ferocious mosquito swarms are distinguished by the state's northern location. According to Derek Sykes, curator of insects and professor of entomology at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, mosquitoes can be much denser in higher latitudes than in lower latitudes. While the reason for this is unknown, it could be due in part to Alaska's abundant standing water. Because permafrost prevents water from draining, the Arctic is full of small pools where mosquito larvae live. Mosquitoes can form massive swarms in northern parts of the state, resembling something out of an Alfred Hitchcock film, pursuing blood en masse. They buzz as they infiltrate between cloth sleeves and pant legs and are even inhaled. Alaskans have to take extreme measures to avoid these annoying bugs. A field worker said he tapes the cuffs of his leather gloves shut and wears long sleeves even in the heat of an interior summer, as well as an $80 bug shirt that he claims is worth $1 million. The general rule throughout the state is that a wet spring means more mosquitoes because the water provides more places for them to lay eggs. Alaska has 35 mosquito species. They are divided into two categories. First, there are the large snow mosquitoes, which appear when there is still snow on the ground. They spend an entire winter as adults tucked into the bark of a dying tree or beneath the snow. Thankfully, while snow mosquitoes are large, they are not as frightening because they don't come in large swarms and are also slow. Other mosquitoes in the state spend the winter as larvae or eggs in or near wet areas and emerge later in the season around May or June. Because of the short growing season in the Arctic, mosquito species emerge at roughly the same time. As a result, there are times when all the female mosquitoes are flying around looking for a blood meal. They may be present for a shorter period of time overall, but their presence is more intense. And mosquitoes are not the only creatures swarming Alaska. While these insects rule the air, fishermen are getting exasperated by the invasion of what appears like sea pickles, which even scientists can't explain. Known as pyrosomes, they are tubular colonies of hundreds or thousands of tiny individual creatures known as zooids that are enmeshed together in a gelatinous tunic with the consistency of gummy bear candy. They are not related to jellyfish and resemble bumpy, opaque pickles in the water. They're typically a few centimeters or inches long, though some can grow to be 1 or 2 feet long. They feed by filtering microscopic algae or phytoplankton as they float with the current and are known to glow in the dark, which gives the organism its scientific name Pyrosoma, Greek for fire body. These large globs of rubbery critters have clogged fishing gear by the thousands, posing a particular problem for the commercial salmon catch in Oregon. Some have even washed up on the beach. It gets to the point where they are so plentiful that fishers can't even fish and simply have to pack their gear up and move elsewhere. Scientists scooped up roughly 60,000 pyrosomes in a single 5-minute trawl with a research net off the Columbia River. Fishermen were also affected in southeast Alaska, where some crews had suspended operations earlier this year due to high pyrosome densities. Scientists believe the pyrosome phenomenon is linked to rising sea temperatures along the Pacific coast, which have caused other changes in marine life in recent years, including an increase in California sea lion strandings. However, what is not clear yet is whether they will stay long enough to disrupt the region's food web. According to biologists, pyrosomes are extremely efficient phytoplankton filters, which are the primary diet of tiny shrimp-like krill, which are in turn a staple for some species of fish, whales, and even seabirds. And making the problem worse is that organisms such as pyrosomes reproduce rapidly, so they can quickly take over an area. And Alaska has much more wonders in its waters, and one of them, the giant red king crab, is not an annoyance to fishermen, rather it's a delight. These crabs are not your run-of-the-mill crabs. Red king crabs can grow to be quite large, with carapace, the shell covering on their back, reaching lengths of up to 11 inches. They can also have leg spans of up to 5 feet. Red king crabs have distinct tails or abdomens that are fan-shaped and tucked beneath the back of the shell. They also have 5 pairs of legs. The first bears their claws or pincers. The right claw is usually the largest on adults. The next 3 pairs are walking legs, and the 5th pair is small and usually tucked underneath the back portion of their carapace. Adult females use these specialized legs to clean their fertilized eggs, and the male uses them to transfer sperm to the female during mating. Male red king crabs grow larger than females, and you can determine their gender by inspecting their abdomens. Male red king crabs have a narrow abdominal flap, whereas female red king crabs have a broad abdominal flap that covers the majority of the abdomen's underside. Adult red king crabs migrate from nearshore to offshore and back every year. They migrate to shallow water in late winter, and the embryos hatch by spring. Before beginning their offshore feeding migration to deeper waters, adult females and some adult males molt and mate. Adult crabs tend to separate by sex away from mating and molting grounds. If not captured, red king crabs can live for up to 30 years. And scientists are also discovering that Alaska has been home to some of the weirdest creatures. They were shocked to find the fossil of a new species of thalassosaur, a marine reptile that lived more than 200 million years ago. The new species, Gunakadite josii, is the most complete thalassosaur ever found in North America and has provided paleontologists with new insights into the thalassosaur family tree. Scientists discovered the fossil in southeast Alaska. Thalassosaurs were marine reptiles that lived more than 200 million years ago during the mid to late Triassic period, when their distant relatives, dinosaurs, first appeared. They grew to be 3 to 4 meters long and lived in equatorial oceans all over the world until the end of the Triassic. The fact that the fossil was discovered at all is remarkable. It was discovered in intertidal rocks. Except for a few days each year, the site is normally submerged. When extreme low tides hit southeast Alaska, people usually flock to the beaches to explore. That was what Jim Beichtal, a geologist with the U.S. Forest Service's Tongass National Forest, was doing when 3.7-foot low tides were forecast. He and a few colleagues headed out to the Keku Islands near the village of Cake to look for fossils, where they found this one. They recognized the fossil's skull right away because of its extremely pointed snout, which was most likely an adaptation for the shallow marine environment where it lived. It was most likely feeding on soft-bodied critters by poking its pointy schnoz into cracks and crevices in coral reefs. These animals were probably highly specialized for feeding in shallow water environments, but when sea levels fell and food sources changed, they had nowhere to go. The Tlingit name Gunakadite was chosen to honor the local culture and history. Gunakadite is a Tlingit sea monster who brings good fortune to those who see it. What do you find most fascinating about Alaska? Let's hear in the comments section below.